This is James Taylor, and you're listening to The Creative Life. The Creative Life podcast is a show created for you, the creative. If you're looking for inspiration, motivation, and advice while at home, at work, or on your daily commute, then this show is for you. Each episode brings you a successful creative, whether that's a musician, writer, artist, designer, performer, educator, or creative entrepreneur. They share their journey, their successes, their failures, their creative process, their insights, and much, much more. In this episode, I speak with David Allen about getting things done as a creative, alleviating feelings of overwhelm, and how to build your business through partnerships. Thanks for listening. Hey, it's James Taylor. I'm delighted today to have with me David Allen. David Allen is founder of the David Allen Company and author of Getting Things Done, The Art of Stress-Free Productivity. If you're new to Getting Things Done, or GTD as it's often called, it is a self-management methodology that became a worldwide phenomenon and has helped countless individuals and organizations bring order to chaos. Indeed, Time magazine called Getting Things Done the defining self-help business book of its time, and the comments contained within it have enabled many to alleviate feelings of overwhelm and bring greater focus, clarity, and creativity to their life and work. And it's my great pleasure to have the writer of that book and the founder of the whole GTD thing here with us today. So welcome, David.
Thanks, James. Delighted to be here.
So share with our listeners what's going on in your world just now.
I'm agonizing over... I'm just started doing acrylic painting, and I'm agonizing over how to get this backlight color on this weeping willow that I'm trying to paint. So that's what I'm staring at right now. So that's kind of the immediate in front of me kind of stuff that's going on. Otherwise, I just came back from Slovenia, where we have a partner there that is our exclusive representative of GTD trainings, and we're now spreading the GTD training methodology around the world. So a lot of my work is helping support those people, those franchisees, and those representatives to sort of get traction in their businesses and give them credibility, because GTD has become sort of this pirated brand out there. Anybody doing anything out there that says this is if you want to do GTD, come try this. So we're sort of trying to share that up and make sure that people know who the real source is and where to get it.
I remember reading the biography of the writer and thinker Edward de Bono a number of years ago, and he talked about that, where he spoke he trained primarily around creativity, and he said one of the problems about creativity is it's such a broad phrase or word that that's why he came up with the idea of lateral thinking, because it was something he was able to copyright and protect, where some of the other terms were not as well. In fact, I think I saw very recently something which looked incredibly like GTD, and so you must be in this constant situation of folks kind of taking your. So obviously there's the legal aspect to that, but does it also feel like a kind of a funny kind of compliment to the impact?
Well, come on, imitation is the greatest form of flattery, So sure, we just need to make sure people know where the source is, and they can, you get what you pay for, so they can take, and come on, this was open source, James. I wrote the book, and one of the reasons I wrote the book of Getting Things Done was because I needed to write a manual, because I never had enough time to give everybody all the information and implications of this methodology that I'd uncovered over 30 years. And so I just said, look, if I get run over by a bus, I need the manual out there. And so I had no idea if it was going to take off or what it would do. But in a sense, it's advanced common sense. There's nothing particularly strange or unusual about the content of this methodology. Everybody's doing these behaviors anyway. They're fairly simple behaviors. But I think, so we still have to kind of protect essentially what the source is, because people, who pretend to be doing this that aren't really doing it, give it a bad name. So that's the main thing we are trying to protect, as we, go forward in the world out there.
And we recently surveyed our list, and one of the things we asked them was what they felt was holding them back to pursue the creative projects that they wanted to do. And the number one thing that came back was time. As I started to kind of drill into that, when we often hear this thing, I don't have enough time. It seems like the default position, that claim of, I'm so busy. It's kind of when people use that thing all the time. It's that default thing. I'm interested because many of your clients that come on the training programs, people that write the book. What's initially kind of going on in their head? Why do they come to your work? And how do you, in those initial stages, kind of maybe help them reframe this sense of thinking about their time? And I say this especially maybe for the creatives and the entrepreneurs out there.
That's a big question, James. I'll try to give you as brief an answer as I can. People need space. They don't need time. It doesn't take any time to have a good idea. It doesn't take any time to be creative. It doesn't take any time to be loving or present with your kids. Those don't require time. They do require that you have a clear space inside your head. If you're taking one meeting and the next, or home to work or work to home, that's not clear space. That's not the place to be creative from. So what you really need is that kind of space. Now, understood, most people have overcommitted. Most people have the stress of opportunity. Most people have so many things they could be doing. And, that can pretty much blow their fuses if they allow all of that to get in their way, in their head. And, as I've discovered over all these years, as the cognitive scientists have, that basically your head's for having ideas, but not for holding them. So everybody who's trying to use their head as their office to remember, to remind, to prioritize, to whatever, there's no light at the end of that tunnel. And that's not what your brain evolved to do. Your brain evolved to recognize patterns in the present tense based on long-term history, so you could recognize a tiger and the baby's crying and food you need to cook and so forth. And your brain is brilliant at that. But you go to the store to buy lemons and you get 6 things and you don't get any lemons. Your brain really sucks as an office. And so most people are trying to use their head as that organizing, prioritizing, office, and it should not be done. So you need to build the external brain. So if people keep a calendar, that's the first start of an external brain. Your brain can't remember all that stuff, and you need to make sure that that reminders are put in the right place, that you'll see at the right time. So this is all about getting the head free of all that other stuff. And most people have a lot more of that other stuff than they realize.
And one of the frameworks you teach in the book and the training that you do, in terms of the main kind of 5-step framework, I noticed that you changed it recently from the first. I was looking, kind of thumbing through my original version of the book, which I must have been given, I think maybe 2005 probably, and looking at some of the latest versions. I've noticed that you changed that very first stage, the actual titles. I think that the very first title I seem to remember in the book, it was collecting ideas. And now I notice in the new version of the book, it's capture. And likewise, in the second, I think you talk about process now, clarify. So I think it'd be maybe useful. Obviously, we're not going to get into all the ins and outs of GTD and the system, because that's, people can check out the book and the other training there. But for someone that's just kind of coming new to it, could you maybe just talk about what those 5 steps or stages are, and maybe why you changed the terminology around those? Sure.
Well, the way you get anything in order and focused, like your kitchen or your company or anything, is these 5 steps. The first thing you do is you identify, wait a minute, what's got my attention? What's not on cruise control here? What's off? If you come into your kitchen and it's out of control, but you've got friends coming over, in an hour, the first thing you notice is what's not where it needs to be, the way it needs to be. So that's the capture step, or that's where you start to identify the things that you need to do something about or might need to do something about. Then step 2 is to clarify, which is basically, wait a minute, what is that? Is that a dirty dish? Is that a clean dish? Is that a spice? Is that good food? Is that bad food? So you're making a clarification then about the nature of these things that are off, not where they need to be, the way they need to be. And then step 3 is you need to organize it. So you put the dirty dishes in the dishwasher, you put the good food back in the fridge, you put the spices where spices go, et cetera. So then you organize all of those based upon your thinking about what they are. And then you step back and reflect. Step 4 is reflect on, and let me look at now the whole scene, the scenario, and look at your time, look at whatever, okay. And then step 5 is engage. You pull out butter and start to melt it, for some appetizers. So that's the 5-step process of capture, clarify, organize, reflect, and engage. I changed the words because the wording is very subtle, at least in English. We've got major problems when you try to translate this into the 30 languages that's out there. But there's a subtlety. Collect simply says it's a passive process of looking around about what's there that I've already created. Capture is a more active process and a more creative process about what are all the things that might be relevant right now in my brain about this. So capture extends and expands that a little bit more universally. about, hey, you want to get a clear head? You might need to be sitting there and capturing ideas about a painting or about a piece of music or about a graphic that you want to do or whatever. So capture is really is a better word to describe that than simply the passive collect. And then clarify, as opposed to process. Clarify means, wait a minute, I need to determine what does this actually mean. Now, you could interchange those words, but clarify is just a broader concept of, okay, now is this something I want to hold for a later painting or a later piece of music, or is this something I want to put in the current the current thing that I'm recording right now, or is whatever. So there's a clarification step, just expanded that idea. Organize is the same, and then reflect instead of just review. Reflect involves a more broad sort of sit back and contemplate and think more about the larger game, the larger picture, than simply to review what you've already got in there. So there was just some subtlety over the last 15 years that was always there. I just found, because there's a broader audience now, there's a broader need for this amidst a whole lot of our population, to really expand this to more of the lifestyle. It's really a lifestyle art and craft about how you manage the flow of life's work. And I just wanted to frame it that way. So these words were better descriptors, at least in English.
One of the other things I know, just kind of looking back in the original version, is how technology tools agnostic it was. And actually how well, even reading, obviously there's a couple of things which have changed in the new version, but in the original version, you could have so easily got down the thing of like using this particular tool, this particular software. And I remember when they came at the time, people said, just tell me which technology, which bit of software I should buy. And I sense you didn't do that. Was that a very conscious decision to make to not necessarily build up an entire suite of technology products around it?
Oh, sure. And in the first edition, I did mention things like the Palm Pilot and Lotus Notes and Microsoft Outlook and things like that, because most people were not yet aware how they could use the technologies at hand that they could then implement this methodology. So I gave a bit more specific references to that. That then dated the book. That's one of the reasons that I wanted to write the new edition, last year, which basically took out most of my references to technology because it's changing by the week, in terms of that stuff. So it is technology independent. It's not agnostic because you need tools, and the technology could be a pen and paper, so it doesn't matter what tool you have. You just need to have some sort of external bucket, external place to be able to both capture things as well as to organize reminders. And that could be in any tool you want. So basically, those tools are changing by the moment. At last count, I think there were over 300 apps that had been created by other people purporting to support the GTD list management model. And they're just list managers. That's really all they are. So you could do it in Excel, you could do it in a Word document, you could do it in paper, you could do it on, you could do it on your arm. As long as you write these things down and park these things somewhere that you need to be reminded of, doesn't matter what your system is.
Yeah, I remember at the time I think it was a tool called OmniFocus. We still around, we used, and then I've gone back to, as my wife calls it, sheets and blankets, like a notebook. And actually it works, it's one of those great systems, GTD, that just works across regardless of pretty much what technology you're using in that way, whether it's old-fashioned or Evernote or whatever. It's a great system for that. I was wondering, also within the book and your work, you talk about this idea of horizons of focus. So it felt like when a lot of people kind of got into GTD, they got very much down to the more kind of granular level, the inbound that was coming in all the time, dealing with those emails, had to like deal with all that stuff that you're getting, is coming at you all the time. You spoke a bit about it at the start of the book, and I wondered, what's your thinking now in terms of that horizons of focus, those different levels of the way of thinking about your life and the space upon which you want to create in?
Oh, it's critical stuff. The problem is if your day-to-day or week-to-week is out of control, don't even try to focus on the vision or purpose or any of that other bigger stuff. It'll just blow your fuses and create guilt and frustration. So you need to get your day-to-day under control so that you have enough space and enough psychic bandwidth to actually think at those higher levels. And actually, you will automatically do that if you get your day-to-day under control it's kind of like a helium balloon. You'll tend to lift up automatically and see things from a larger perspective. If you actually created a list of all of your projects, anybody listening to this, by the way, most of you have between 30 and 100 projects. If you include anything that's going to take more than one step to finish in your personal and professional lives, get tires on your car, handle the next holiday, hire the assistant, look into getting an increased credit line. I need to see if I need to look into getting a new art instructor. All those are projects. If you actually identified all of those things and then put them on a list out in front of you, it'll make there's a part of you that's going to automatically think, wait a minute, what am I doing with my life? And is this really the direction I want to go? If I just ask you before you did that, gee, James, what are you doing with your life and where do you want to go? Yeah, you'll kind of fumble around with that, but you're going to subliminally have all those other things pulling and tugging at you that do not allow you free attention to actually focus clearly on these higher horizons. They are absolutely critical. But, it doesn't take you but a second to change a goal, but it takes you 2 years to learn how to execute on it. So the execution piece, knowing how to make sure that whatever you commit to internally, you know how to make that happen in this world, is a lot of what the getting things done methodology is about. See, it starts with where you are, not with where you should be.
And you're now on having written your kind of third book. What did you learn about the experience of actually writing that first book? Where was your kind of head at that time in writing that first book?
Well, what I learned was, do not try to write a book while you have a full-time plus daily job and expect to handle it in any short period of time. It's funny. I almost became an alcoholic trying to write a book on stress-free productivity. So it's like, well, oh my God, because there was so, writing is an incredibly creative process, and it takes a lot of energy and a lot of thought to try to figure out how to put stuff in there. And I learned a lot. Obviously, I learned a ton, writing this book, because it forced me to digest, to gel, to get to the essence of stuff, that I was trying to talk about. And also, it's a different audience in reading a book as opposed to just delivering a seminar or a speech. So I had a lot to learn. It took 4 years from the time I pulled the trigger and made this an active project to get the book written till it actually got published and on the shelf. So that was a long process, figuring out how to do that, how to put this somewhat simple intellectual property into a form that people could digest, that was easy for people to sort of understand. And at the same time, give everybody the complete picture. So in case I got run over by a bus, I thought, somebody would figure this out, but, nobody had figured it out by the time I figured it out. So I said, okay, maybe I just better put it in print out there so that it's available for whoever wants it at whatever level.
And with a book like that, you can obviously go a couple of different ways. You see many people with a book in that vein going on and doing keynotes and really building an incredible speaking business primarily. You have other people move into dealing a lot in the consulting space. You went very much about creating a global training company around the cause of the ideas that were in that book. Was that something you thought from the get-go, or was it just as a need that you could see develop as people were responding and you were kind of finding out, actually, well, this feels like the natural place to go next with the business?
Both, James, actually. In a way, from the very beginning, I realized this was a core thought process and a way to engage with our world that we're all here to do. We're all here to be accountable for what we have created, where we put our creative energy, and then where we continue to focus our creative energy, what we continue to create. So managing completion, managing acknowledgement of what we're engaged in, and getting on top of that and being appropriately engaged with that, as well as understanding the power of our creative focus. I mean, that to me is our planetary experience. So from the very beginning, really, back in the early 80s, as I began to understand this stuff and be involved in it, I really realized this is really, if I had nothing else I would teach anybody, this is the information I would want to share based upon my experience and what I know to be true about our experience here as human beings. So in a way, from the very beginning, I knew this was a globally relevant kind of a thing for people to understand and to implement and to be engaged with. So that was the long picture. And the shorter picture was, okay, I need a business, and how do I do that? So yes, we had the choice. Catherine and I, my wife and I, both had the choice. When the book became successful, I had the choice of just keeping it a boutique speaking business or taking this to a larger format. But the world kept banging on our door. I mean, people were going, God, my God, the world needs this. Everybody needs this. Everybody's getting overwhelmed out there. And there was no cultural barrier to this. We'd already experienced that there was no bias culturally, gender, age, any of that stuff with this information, that it was useful to anybody who had a busy life and wanted to get on top of it. So we said, okay, let's see if we can figure out how to scale this. So that's been it took 20 years to figure out what I'd figured out. And then I wrote the book and I said, okay, I could just end here because it's now there as a methodology for whoever wants it. And then I figured, well, if I'm still alive, then I'll figure, okay, well, maybe the rest of my life I should figure out how to get this to as many people as we can, as efficiently as we can. So that's what I'm in the middle of.
And one of the ways you did that scaling as efficiently was through partnerships. So it's every country that you have a partner there that you work with who are empowered and have the rights to be able to go and teach GTD and also and your other kind of programs as well. I'm interested. How did it feel kind of building those very first partnerships, those very first relationships in the early days?
In the early days, we tried, fits and starts, and the stuff just didn't work. And like, how do you do this? And the legal, there were just so many angles to this. It was much bigger gum than I knew how to chew. So we really didn't do much about that. People kept banging on our door that were friends of ours in different countries, in Brazil and in the UK and so forth. And we said, okay, well, let's create some sort of a ad hoc relationship, which we tried to do. And then at one point, some people approached us, the people who had built the Franklin Covey sort of international network, David Covey, Stephen Covey's son, and Stephan Martix. And they came to us and said, hey, we now know how to build international partnerships. So we actually partner with them to set up these partnerships. So they've been the ones who basically have tapped their network and their expertise to know how to set up these business relationships around the world. So basically I'm responsible for the intellectual property and certifying their master trainers. And then our partners, smcov.com, they're our partners who basically have set up the business relationships.
I see. That must be fun because there is such a they're different, but they're kind of related. That with the Stephen Covey side of things. Was that such a smart decision? I don't know where. So they came to you initially. That's how, because that feels like a really natural and an awesome way of doing it. There's that network. There's people with the same the similar needs in terms of the end clients as well. That feels like that was a great idea. Whether it was yours or
We it's kind of like, hey, it showed up. We kept looking for what's the best way to do this, and we just were open to all the possibilities and opportunities, and that walked in our door. So, that's great, and it's worked very well. So we're in that for 3 or 4 years already now. So we're officially in about 60 countries that they've set up those business relationships, which is nice.
Amazing.
A lot of those are just startups, so just beginning.
So can you in this journey, this incredible journey, this creative journey you've had, can you tell us about a key insight or a light bulb moment in your life where you went, oh, okay, this is the direction I need to be going with my work or my life, or what I want to do here. You were able to create that space for yourself and not just for your clients, but so whenever you create that kind of space, you have to kind of sit down and think, well, where next? So can you maybe talk about any kind of those seminal insights for yourself?
Yeah, James, I have to say there was no major epiphanal moment anywhere.
There's no opening of the skies.
No, the trumpets didn't blare. No, the chariots didn't come down from the sky. No, not at all. It was really just starting to pay attention to what had my attention. Paying attention to, wait a minute, I think, and let me start to kind of move in that direction. And it was really sort of being willing to do that and being willing to take the risk and say, okay, I think this is what I need to do now. And sort of following that intuitive internal judgment call, about what was next. But it was no big thing. It was a lot of little things that I just, made, as I look back, I say, yeah, made the right call, about what to do. But there was no simple answer to any of that.
So we were talking about tools, and so I'm going to ask a question I ask of all my guests, and I'm guessing with you it might be a slightly interesting answer you might give. Do you have a particular online resource or a tool or an app, like an Evernote, for example, that you love and you enjoy using for your work?
Sure. Well, we use IBM Notes, the old Lotus Notes. We still use that in our company and even our small company, and I use that. And a friend of mine who was my CTO for years actually built an add-on to that, to the task management function of that is pretty much maps to the GTD process. So, I can send you an email, hit a radio button that says waiting for it, automatically puts it on my waiting for list, automatically puts your name and date stamps it. So there's some simple things that, so I use that process. Nobody's come up with anything quite that slick yet. They're all just list managers out there. So, I used a paper planner for 20 years. I used the Palm Pilot for, several years, but, basically, no, I have no magic wand about any of that. It's still relatively, cognitively anyway, labor intensive, that you have to figure out, where do I put what and where do I put this list and so forth. A lot of people want this to be automated a lot better than it could be right now. And I've explored it with, a couple of partners and a couple of different businesses over these years, and it's just not ready. The market's not ready. Nobody thinks they need it. And the technology really would be huge to really be able to build a dashboard that would let you, let you, James, decide, what do I need to see when and from what source, and to make that bi-directional, whether that's Evernote or OmniFocus or whatever that you're using out there. So it's just not ready yet. So, it's a list manager world right now, and there are hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of ways to do that.
I'm guessing the key word within that is trusted. Whatever the system is that you use, it's the one that you trust, and you know that whether it's your brain dumps, your weekly reviews, it's in that system, you can trust it.
Right. Well, trust includes your behavior. So you can have a trusted system, and hey, it's rigorous. When I put the data in there, it's not lost. But if you don't look at it at the right time and keep it current, keep it engaged, so the weekly review becomes the way that you make a trusted system, is you have to constantly keep your systems and your external brain current. You need to keep it refocused. You need to keep it, And so it's a strange paradox that you actually have to use your thinking to clear your thinking.
Absolutely. As we start to finish up here, if you could recommend just one book to our listeners, and one record, one album to our listeners, what would they be?
One book. I would suggest probably read a book called Brain Chains, 2 words, Brain Chains, by Theo, Theo, Compernole, 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 Belgian psychiatrist, psychologist, physician, cognitive science researcher, executive coach, about how your brain doesn't work and how addictive the new digital world can be if you don't manage all of how your mind handles all this stuff well. A great book. I'd give another one too. Kevin Kelly's The Inevitable. He was the founding editor of Wired magazine, and it's the 12 inevitable vectors and trends that are happening now, no matter what, that is making this. It's going to make the Industrial Revolution look minor relative to what's coming toward us with virtual reality and AI and things like that.
I think many of our listeners will know Kevin's work through the 1,000 True Fans art piece that he wrote as well. Great writer. So we'll put those down in the show notes. Well, what would be the record? What would be the album then?
Music. Let's see. I'd say anything from Vivaldi and Telemann. They're the ways to do a weekly review. Just put on Vivaldi, put on a good Telemann, just put on a good Baroque. Piece of music.
Do you listen to music? I know you're as well as your other things you have. You mentioned at the very start of the show that you're paint as well. Do you listen to music when you paint, when you create?
No.
That way? No. It's interesting because it's one of the questions I sometimes ask about, like the visual artists that come on the show as well, and many of them don't. They actually really enjoy that space and that silence as well. So they can't do the two things at the same time. Let's imagine, final question for you, David. Let's imagine if you woke up tomorrow morning and had to start from scratch. So you have all the tools of your trade, all the knowledge that you've acquired over the years, but no one knows you, and you know no one. You have no contacts. How would you restart? What would you do?
I'd go to the local bar, or coffee shop or whatever, or, cafe, or what, depends on what time of the day it is. And I'd start to meet people, and I would start to connect. So I would start to engage with anybody that I had any connection with at all. And if I had no connections, I would start to make them. So everything that's very cool in your life will ultimately be attributable directly or almost directly to your willingness to step out of your comfort zone and meet somebody you never met before.
Well, on that note of connection, what's the best way for people to connect with you, to learn more about getting things done and all the other kind of products and programs that you have?
Hey, gettingthingsdone.com. That's our website. I'm GTD Guy on Twitter. I'm DAllen45 on Instagram. So all those are ways people can see who I am, what I'm doing, and what's up, and connect in with more information about all this stuff.
Well, David, thank you so much for coming on the show today. We'll put all of those links on the show notes. People go to jamestaylor.me and just look for David Allen. You'll get all of those links we've been discussing today. Thank you so much. I will let you get back to your painting and your art, and I look forward to hearing you speak, and I look forward to the future books that will be published in over 60 languages as well, even more languages to come. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, James.
Hey, James Taylor here again. And if you're interested in living a more creative life, then I'd love to invite you to join me as I share some of the most successful strategies and techniques that high-performing creatives use. I put them all together in a free downloadable ebook that you can get by going to jamestaylor.me. That's jamestaylor.me to get your free downloadable ebook on creativity.